Well, welcome back, mathletes. Um, so this is part two of our set of videos on functions, the introduction to functions. And so the second part is on evaluating functions. And so let's go ahead and get started here. Now, we've actually done some of this before. In fact, the whole time we were going through and graphing lines and things like that, we were actually evaluating functions as we went. And so really what it means to evaluate a function um, is to plug something in and see what you get. So if I have a function that's f of x is equal to, oh, I don't know, let's say 2x minus 4, right? This is actually the equation of the line. We would have seen it in the form y equals 2x minus 4. But this set of instructions right here, the way that it's given, allows us to tell you what the input is that I want you to plug in. And so um, let's say I wanted to evaluate this at x equals 3, right? And so what I like to do is just write empty spaces everywhere you see an x, right? And we know that x is going to be 3, so this would actually be f of 3. And this 3 right here, this, I know this looks like multiplication, but it is absolutely not multiplication. What it actually is just a notation that tells you 3 is what we're replacing x with in the function f. And so that means everywhere you see a x, you plug in a 3. So here, this would evaluate as 6 minus 4, which gives me a 2. And so what this tells me is that f of 3 is equal to 2. And remember that this input was an x. Now, the output here is your y. So this is actually giving you a coordinate. If I plug in a 3, I get out a 2. Right? And so that's the basics of evaluation. It's just, it's a way of lining up your instructions, right? And knowing what you're plugging in. And then using those instructions to be able to get a y value out from each x value, right? So you're exploiting the relationship between x and y that you're given. Now, the way we're going to see these a little bit different. We are going to be given a function. Let's call this one f of x. And let's say that f of x is equal to 0.2 times x. Right? So that means whatever the x value is, if I want the y value, I multiply it by 0.2. Now, in addition to this, what they're going to be doing is giving you your x values as well. And so in this case, let's say x is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So what they're doing here when they tell you this is they're telling you what they want the domain to be. Now, theoretically, you can plug any number you wanted in for x and multiply it by 0.2, and you can get something out for y. So under normal conditions, you could plug anything into this function. The domain is all real numbers. But when they give you specific values, right, what this means is that they're turning it into a discrete function. And this is just vocabulary. And remember, we saw the word discrete at the beginning of the semester. We didn't spend a lot of time with it, but we did talk about it. And what discrete means is that you can line things up, right? You can see things as individuals. Anything that has a finite domain, and finite by meaning not infinite, is going to be a discrete function. So I have 5 specific points that I can plug in, 5 x values that I'm allowed to plug in. That is not infinite by any means, and so this is a discrete function, right? It has a discrete domain. So now let's look at what this means. If we want to plug this in, if we want to figure out what our points are in this function, there's a couple of ways we can organize it. right? And we can make an XY table. We've seen these before. And basically what these 5 points are telling us is what our X values are in our table. Now keep in mind this table can also be organized this way, right? Both of these are legitimate organizations of tables. Okay, and what we're actually after, though, are the list of points, right? What points do we get? And so we'll be writing those here as we find those. So really what we need to do is just plug these things in one at a time. So I need to find, let me switch colors here, f of 1, f of 2, f of 3, f of 4, and maybe we can scoot this up just a little bit. There we go. And f of 5. And so we're just going to be plugging these things in one at a time. I already have a rule that tells me what to do with my input values. So now this is 0.2 times 1. This one is 0.2 times 2. This one's 0.2 times 3. 0.2 times 4. Oops. 0.2 times 4, and then 0.2 times 5. And these are all things that, well, you can plug them, you can work them out by hand, or you can plug them into the calculator, but you should get these answers: 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and 1. Right? Those are the values we end up getting. And so those are the values that go in my table. I know if x is 1, f of x is 0.2. If x is 2, it's 0.4. If x is 3, it's 0.6. If x is 4, it's 0.8. And if x is 5, it's 1. And then each one of these, and actually I'll write them in here also, right? If I was writing it over here, this would be the organization. The points that I'm getting are exactly from this. F of x can be thought of as y when it comes to the coordinates itself. And so this is the point 1 and 0.2, and then 2 as 0.4, 3, 0.6, 4 as 0.8, and 5, 1. Oops, let's go ahead and close those up. Right? And so I'm basically finding all my points. And these 5 points are actually what your homework is going to be asking about. Okay. Now, so let's look at the second example here. Ooh. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Get that out of the way. Hey, now. Yeah. Okay. Let's just draw a line there. It keeps wanting to pull that stuff back down. Okay, so here's what I want you to do is I'm going to write down the function, and I'm going to write down the domain I want you to work with this function on. See if you can come up with the table, fill out the table, and find the points that we're going to be looking for. So the function is g of x is equal to 0.5 x squared plus 1.2x, and then the domain I'm going to give you are the points 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there's still 5 points. It's just we're starting at 0 instead this time. So pause it right now, see if you can work this out, and then replay, and then start playing the video again and see if we match up. Okay, so whether you paused it or not, let's see what we got. So these numbers here are telling me that the table I'm looking for is going to look like this. Let's see here. My evaluation points are going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so if I'm going to find this, now you notice I have 2 x's here this time. And so as I plug these things in, I want to be thinking about it this way. Right? This is actually where my x goes. I'm just leaving it blank. You notice I'm leaving this blank too. And then it's plus 1.2 times x again. And then once we know what x is, in this first case, it's 0. And so I'm just going to put a 0 everywhere I see this thing. And unfortunately, zeros kill people. And so I end up with the 0.00. So this thing goes through the origin. For the 0.1, when x is 1, it's the exact same thing. But instead of plugging in the 0, what I'm going to do is I'm plugging in 1 everywhere I have parentheses. And if you work that one out, you get 1.7. And so I have my second point here. So my first point is the 0.00. My second point is the 1, 1.7. And then g of 2 is the next one. And so that's 1.5 times 2, or excuse me, 0.5 times 2 squared plus 1.2 times 2. And if I work that out, I end up with 4.4. And so my next point is the 0.2, 4.4. And if I'm working out g of 3, let's see, I have 0.5 times nothing squared, a blank squared, plus 1.2 times something. And that something is going to be 3, so I'm going to write that in. And if I work that whole business out, you can just plug it into your calculator, but that comes out to 8.1. And so my next point is the 0.3, 8.1. And the last thing I need to compute here is when x is 4. So it's 0.5 times 4 squared plus 1.2 times 4. And if I work that one out, I end up with 12.8. So this is 12.8. And so the last point I'm looking for is the 0.4, 12.8, right? And so these are the points that you're supposed to be finding, right? So these 5 points are your function. That actually, if this is your entire domain, then these 5 points are your entire function. All right? Okay. And so that wraps up our video series on functions. And trust me, in the sections to come, we will be talking much more about functions. All right? I'll see you guys later.